Dynasty sell highs. We're talking about that in today's video. As always, give us a like and subscribe. We are, I think, 13 subscribers away from 400. Help us get there. Put out Dynasty and fantasy football content all year long. Today, we are talking about some sell highs. Now, whenever I make these videos, I get a lot of pushback. Very important to note, these are sell highs. I'm not saying I don't like these guys. I like all of these players. I think they're all going to be pretty good in 2024. But the key to Dynasty is knowing when to buy and knowing when to sell. And the philosophy of Dynasty football, there's a lot of things that go into why players fall, why players rise, predicting those things the best we can, trying to stay relevant, not only for 2024, but to build a dynasty to win multiple years, to win 3, 4, 5, to be in contention for 5 straight years. So again, this is a sell high. Don't undersell any of these players. We're starting off with the running back position. I don't have any quarterbacks for you today, just because in Superflex, quarterbacks are a little bit difficult in terms of selling high and things like that. It gets a little complicated. So first up on the list is Zamir White. Starting off with the running back, Zamir White is currently the RB20. Now, I think that Zamir White is going to have a potentially top 15 running back season. There's a very good chance of that. You go look at that Raiders depth chart. It's Zamir White, it's Alexander Mattison, it's Amir Abdullah, and Dylan Lobby, I always forget how to say it, who they drafted, I believe, in like the 6th round. More of a pass catcher than anything. Raiders are going to run the hell out of the ball. Absolutely run the hell out of the ball. Just look at Zamir White's numbers the last, 4 weeks of the season last year. Dude is getting 20, 25 carries, 25 total touches every single game. So he could be an absolute monster this year. But the running back position is so volatile. It changes so much. And you better bet that if Zamir White is a little bit disappointing or gets injured or kind of has, like his teammate, an Alexander Mattison-like season, he's going to plummet in the rankings. There's no safety net with Zamir White. He's not Bijan or Saquon. He's not at this level of caliber player. He doesn't have that draft capital behind him like those guys do. If he is just kind of average, still good for fantasy, but average, his stock's going to plummet. Absolutely plummet. I have some running backs here, and I just want to show you how volatile the position is. Tony Pollard, heading into last year, was the RB5 according to Keep Trade Cut. Now he's the RB30 because he had a mediocre year. He wasn't even that bad of a player last year, right? He had over 1,000 total yards, I believe. We all expected a whole lot more, right? We expected a whole lot more from Tony Pollard. I did. Everyone did. He was RB15 last year. He's now RB30. Alexander Mattison, we just talked about it. RB18 heading into last year. RB67 because he was not what we expected. We assumed he was going to be good. Not what we expected. Dameon Pierce, 4th round pick, looked good his rookie year. A new coaching staff comes in. They don't like him. They don't use him. He's RB59. Javonte Williams was as high as the RB2. Got hurt. Looked mediocre last year. Coming back from the major knee injury. Went from RB2 to RB18. The running back position is way too volatile. When you see these guys, especially the guys ranked from 12 to 24, these guys are going to be switching all the time. Zamir White, to me, this could possibly be the highest we ever see Zamir White, and I'm always looking to capitalize on that. If you trade away Zamir White from your team and your team loses, there's other problems with your team. Zamir White shouldn't be the thing that pushes you over into the championship. You should already have a good team around him, and he's just a piece. And people always think, last thing I'm going to say about Zamir White, people always think and imagine, oh, but I'm taking out 14 points per game out of my roster. You're not really, because you're replacing him with someone else. What's the difference between Zamir White and if you, let's say you trade Zamir White for Raheem Mostert, right? Who's RB44. So you ideally, or theoretically, you can get that trade done. Zamir White, RB20, Raheem Mostert, RB44, and you can get something on top of it. And Mostert could just be better than Zamir White. So knowing when to capitalize on these guys, maybe getting an older veteran that people don't value as much, that you think can still put up a good year in 2024, and a piece on top of Zamir White. That's how you stay relevant year in and year out, is making these kind of trades. Next up, I have Jaylen Warren, the RB24. Now, I like Jaylen Warren. I think he's a solid player. He's explosive. He was the RB25 in half PPR last year. His ranking to me, he's even ranked over Najee Harris, which is a little crazy. His ranking to me is totally on the basis that he's going to get more than what he did last year. And I really don't think that's true. I don't know if it's true, I should say. I'm not 100% sure if it is true. So I don't want to take that risk, because if Jaylen Warren either gets what he got last year or even less, his stock's going to plummet. Absolutely plummet. So I don't want to take that risk with Jaylen Warren. I think they like Najee in terms of what he can do between the tackles, get the tough yards. Yeah, he's not explosive. They're still going to use Najee. They're still going to give Najee 250 plus touches, in my opinion. I don't think Jaylen Warren's going to take over this backfield, and he's kind of being ranked like he potentially is. So I don't want to take that risk. I want to cash out when I can for Jaylen Warren, because, again, his stock's going to plummet if he does the same as last year. Absolutely the exact same. And then last running back I have here, a lot of people are going to freak out. It's Isiah Pacheco at RB13, basically for the same reasons of Zamir White. Again, I like Pacheco. I think he's a fun player. He's good for the Chiefs. They obviously used him and they relied on him, especially in the playoffs. But the fact of the matter is, we saw Pacheco have over 200 carries last year. He missed a few games. He was on pace for, I believe, 250 carries over a 17-game season, about 14, 15 carries a game. He came in as RB16 overall, I think RB15 in half PPR in points per game, even with 40-plus catches and over 200 carries. I don't know if that's going to be repeated for Pacheco. I don't know if the Chiefs really want to. Last year, the Chiefs, what was the narrative? They have no receivers who can catch the ball. Rashee Rice came on. Travis Kelce was getting older, things like that. What they do, well, they brought in Xavier Worthy in a first-round pick. They brought in Marquise Brown. I think they could potentially get back to the Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs that we're used to, of throwing for almost 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns, especially if Rashee Rice is not going to miss half the season, which we don't know yet. So I went back and looked at the Chiefs under Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and what running back had the most carries since 2018, and it was Kareem Hunt in 2018. I think it had 181 carries or something like that. Kareem Hunt did in 2018. Now, he could have been injured. I didn't look at potentially if they were injured or not. I think he was. But the point being, I think he missed a few games. The point being is the Chiefs, all other years, their lead running back has like 180 carries. I think that's more how they want to play. They want to win with Patrick Mahomes. Now, could Pacheco be a top 15 running back again? Of course. I wouldn't be surprised. He's on the offense to do it and to get touchdowns. The point being, though, is that their identity is not Pacheco. And I just talked about the volatility of the running back position. So I'm willing to cash out on Pacheco if I can, and especially if I have the right team built around him. If I can tear down, once again, from Pacheco to an Alvin Kamara, RB28, or an Aaron Jones, RB35, and get some draft capital and get some pieces, I'm going to do it, because that's, again, how you stay relevant in Dynasty football. Moving on to the receivers, I have 3 receivers for you here today. First up, I have Jordan Addison. I have a lot of young receivers, surprisingly. He's wide receiver 22, and I like Jordan Addison. He had a great rookie year. Over 900 yards and 10 touchdowns is awesome to see. A little bit weighted by the touchdowns, but still, like, if he's that type of player, then he's that type of player. My fear for Addison is more about the next couple years of the Vikings with either Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy, or J.J. McCarthy for both. We've only had 5 rookie quarterbacks come in and throw for over 4,000 yards. Now, could that be McCarthy? Yeah, because they're going to throw the ball a lot. But is there a chance that he's going to have a little bit of a learning curve, or that they start with Sam Darnold and maybe he throws for like 3,800 yards? There's a higher chance. My point with Addison as of right now, where we stand, is I don't see him this time next year being higher than wide receiver 20 or 22. I really don't, because a lot of things happen. Just go back and look at, once again, keep trade cut, and look at what Addison where he was to end this year in terms of wide receiver overall and where he is now. January 12th, which I believe is the end of the season, January 12th, let's see, January 6th. So January 8th, 6th, we're talking about right at the end of the season. He was as high as wide receiver 13. Since then, he's down to wide receiver 22. He hasn't played a game. He hasn't been injured. It's not like he's been playing or got injured or has looked like shit. No. External factors happen. External things happen. Rookies get added to the ranking. Every year, we're going to have rookies that are going to come in that are going to be ranked in the top 15. Every year. This year, we have 3. Well, that drops Addison down 3 spots, right? There's going to be other players that are right around Addison that get contract extensions or their situation gets better and they're going to skyrocket and they're going to pass up Addison. Those things happen every year. And, external factors of Addison losing Kirk Cousins obviously had an effect on this. Now, that's not going to happen every year. The situation's not going to get worse necessarily. But every single year, these guys that are already ranked in the 15 to 24 range, they're going to drop down a few spots because of rookies and other players getting contract extensions or their teams improving with the quarterback situation. So the same thing to me is going to happen. Addison's going to be right around this wide receiver 20 to 25 range, in my opinion, when we're talking about this in January. And when we're talking about it in May, he's going to be down to wide receiver 28, 27. I don't really see him having a monster year with J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold as their quarterback in 2024 and Justin Jefferson there. So Justin Jefferson's the alpha. Addison could have another nice year, 900 yards and 8 touchdowns, which is good, but it's not difference-making numbers that we want to see from our receivers, and he's going to fall a little bit. So that's all I'm saying with Addison. Like the player, just don't really love the situation he's in right now. Chris Olave is another one of these players that I really, really love. I think he's very, very talented player. My problem with Chris Olave is, at least with Addison, we have a little bit of unknown. J.J. McCarthy, what if he has a C.J. Stroud season? Well, then I look stupid for saying trade away Jordan Addison because Addison's going to have a really good year, right? There's some unknown that we know Olave's situation, assuming Derek Carr stays healthy, probably for the next 2 years. They have Spencer Rattler, who they drafted in the 5th or 6th round. He needs a couple years to sit. The Saints are not going to be bad enough to be in the top 10, in my opinion, unless Carr gets hurt. So I don't think they're going to be able to get a top 10 quarterback or be in the range to get one of the top quarterbacks in the next couple of drafts. They're going to be solid 8-9, 9-8, 7-10, whatever. They're going to be middle of the pack team. They're going to be solid. And I am afraid that Chris Olave is going to take the path of a DJ Moore or a Terry McLaurin. That's my fear. And for years, we've been saying for both those players, they're so talented. They're really good. They just don't have they're not the type of receiver to just be a monster target hog like a Devontae Adams or Justin Jefferson. They're not quite that tier of receiver to where even if they have kind of a bad quarterback, they're still going to get 12 targets a game or whatever. They're the type of players that do need a little bit better quarterback play to elevate them to elite status, in my opinion, right? In my opinion. They need the better quarterback play to elevate them. Okay. So if you go back and look at Terry McLaurin and DJ Moore, both these guys were top 10 receivers at one point, during their first few years in the NFL. And they both dropped into the 20s. Yeah. I think Terry McLaurin right now is like wide receiver 30, right? DJ Moore, he's a little bit higher. He's wide receiver 18, but he did drop. Before he had a big season with the Bears, he was in the 20s. He was in the 20s, in the mid-20s, even in the 30s, I think, at one point. I think the same thing could happen to Olave. If we have one more year of Olave just being kind of a mid to low-end wide receiver 2 in fantasy, he's going to drop from this wide receiver 10 ranking. So, and do we really see Derek Carr elevating his game? Do we really see that? We've only ever seen Derek Carr produce one elite season for a fantasy receiver, and that was Devontae Adams in 2022. And I don't think Olave's at Devontae Adams level. Derek Carr has only once thrown for over 30 touchdowns, and that was in 2015. He hasn't thrown for more than 4,000 yards in 2 straight years. Yeah, I don't see it for Olave, unfortunately, and it's more about the quarterback situation. Last up, I have George Pickens. Wide receiver 27, had a good year last year. 1,100 yards. Is that right? 1,100. Yeah, 1,140 yards, 63 catches, 5 touchdowns. Sounds great. Numbers sound great. And then you look at the actual, okay, let's see at the actual fantasy finish. It wasn't that great. In half PPR, which is a little bit better format for Pickens, he was 26, wide receiver 26. In full PPR, he was wide receiver 29. So that's not difference-making stuff. That's outside of a wide receiver 2. He's essentially a wide receiver 3. I don't really see his situation getting that much better in terms of the quarterback's better for sure. Deontay Johnson's gone. That could definitely help Pickens. I think this team's going to run the ball more. He's not going to get a high volume. I don't really see him getting much more than, the 100 targets that he got last year and the 60 to maybe 75 catches that he's going to get. He had yards per reception at 18.1, which is obviously really, really good. But I went back and looked since 2000, receivers to have over 18 yards per reception and put up 1,000 yards. There's been 25 of them, so there's about one every year essentially that does it. There's only been 2 players that have repeated that in terms of a high yards per reception, 17 or 18 or higher, and over 1,000 yards. It was Vincent Jackson and Deshaun Jackson. They did it for a few years. So it's very rare to get these guys that can repeat that consistently, to be that consistent downfield threat, but still put up over 1,000 yards. That's my worry with George Pickens. I mean, we've kind of seen it his first 2 years of what kind of player he is. Even in college, he averaged over 15 yards per reception or right around 15 yards per reception. He's a little bit of a boom bust type of player. So just thinking to capitalize on him, especially if he is just he's another one of these receivers. Do you really see him going much higher than do we see him turning into a 1,400 yard guy or a double-digit touchdown guy or a 90, 100 catch guy? I don't. I really don't. I think he's just this type of player, 70 catches, 1,100 yards, maybe 6 touchdowns, 7 touchdowns, which are good numbers. They're usable. That's going to fall a little bit because of other players and their potential, having higher potential. Last up for you, I got 2 tight ends. David Njoku, tight end 11. Njoku was an absolute monster with Joe Flacco. We were waiting for this. Super athletic, built like a freaking Adonis, right? Like the dude is ripped. He was a first round pick, and he was just a disappointment. It was year seven where he finally broke out, 2023. Before that, he'd never had more than 650 yards or 5 touchdowns, right? Last year, he was awesome with Joe Flacco, but that's the problem. It was with Joe Flacco. You look at his 17-game pace before Joe Flacco took over as the quarterback, 78 catches, 760 yards, 3 touchdowns. Okay numbers for a tight end, a start-worthy tight end, right? But not a difference maker. You look at his numbers with Joe Flacco, 102 catches, 1,326 yards, 14 touchdowns. He was an absolute monster. In the playoff game, he had a big touchdown run. Absolute monster. I just don't know if that's going to be repeated. Now, my hope is they saw that from Njoku and they say, hey, we need to get this guy the ball more. But there's a good chance that just doesn't happen. And you look at what Njoku, he's a very fragile asset, because if he just goes back to being the Njoku pre-2023, he's going to plummet in the rankings. He's actually up to he's at tight end 10 now for whatever he increased. He swapped with Evan Ingram. But you look at him before he started going off, he was the tight end 17, right? He was the late teens tight end. If he goes back to pre-2023 Njoku, he's going to fall right back there. So I could be wrong, and I hope I am wrong, because I liked seeing Njoku dominate, but there's just a chance that he falls back into, just being kind of a mediocre tight end. And last up, we have Luke Musgrave. Ever since these two were drafted, Musgrave and Tucker Kraft, ever since they were drafted, everyone drafted Musgrave, right? Musgrave was the one to go in dynasty rookie drafts, and Tucker Kraft was a rookie free agent, undrafted free agent. And I said, to me, Musgrave and Kraft, they have like the equal chance at being the tight end one. So I'm going to just take my chance on Kraft because I don't have to spend any draft capital on him. And you look at how it played out. Yeah, Musgrave started the season as the starter and then got hurt. Musgrave, his 17-game pace before he got hurt, 56 catches, 579 yards, 2 touchdowns. Good numbers for a rookie tight end. Tucker Kraft's pace when he took over and Musgrave got hurt, 63 catches, 757 yards, 5 touchdowns. He was more efficient with the catches. He had more catches, was more efficient with them, more touchdowns. Now, other factors could have come into play there and things like that. Sure. One key thing for me, though, was go look at the snap percentages of the playoff games, of their 2 playoff games for the Dallas and San Francisco. Tucker Kraft, at least for the San Francisco game, and I think for the Dallas game as well, was not on the injury report. Tucker Kraft played 27% of the snap. Sorry, Musgrave was not on the injury report. Musgrave came back and played 27% of the snaps. Kraft over 80% of the snaps. That's a little telling to me that they potentially prefer Kraft over Musgrave. So we're not ranking it that way. I think Tucker Kraft is like tight end 22 or 23 or something. Musgrave is tight end 15. I would cash out on Musgrave right now because there's a good chance. What are the chances that he is the only tight end and he's the only tight end producing on that team? Very low. Very low. I think it's more likely they split. And then I think there's a good chance that Kraft is just better and they use him more. And then, to me, the least likely is that Musgrave is the best, and they just use him 75 or 80% of the time. So I would cash out on him if I could, because I think we're going to see potentially a different philosophy there. So there you have it, guys. These are my sell highs. Again, this is sell high. Please don't sell low on these guys. I like most of these guys or all of these guys, but try to get some value if you can. I appreciate it. Like and subscribe as always, and we'll catch you guys in the next.